You ready for it, Mike? You ready for it? Well, hello.
Well, hello.
Well, hello. Hey, guys, welcome back to the podcast. You're watching Pencil to Pencil, your favorite pandemic podcast, brought to you every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. That's for you East Coasters out there. Hosted and produced by yours truly, the Black Dick Cavett, Johnny Carson, and the Kevin Bacon of comic books, Mike Manley.
You're Black Bacon?
Black Bacon. Black Bacon. That might be my new street name. I like it. Jamar Nicholas, welcome. I am joined by the proverbial hip, by my best bud and Modern Masters of Comic Book, Mike Manley. Mike Manley, what do you got there in your hands there, sir?
I have my single creator copy of a reprint of a bunch of Venom stories.
Oh, wow.
So they now, you used to get like a box, like 25 copies.
Yeah.
Now you get one.
Were you like inking over Larson during that run?
No. I inked one thing over Eric. No, this reprints like all these appearances of Venom, including Darkhawk 13 and 14.
Oh, gotcha.
So they sent me my one copy because, the mouse is always gracious and so giving.
Could they spare it? They gave you like one trade, right?
Yeah, and the weird thing is that I get it from Midtown Comics, FedExed. So you would think like, wow, all this. Now I used to in the old days, everybody would get their comps the week that they would ship to the stores from Quebec or La Fontaine. There in Montreal. They would ship you your box of comps. And typically you got about 25 comps, but starting about, 15, 20 years ago, they started whittling down. Now, I also don't know if that's because there was like Compgate, where guys were going and taking
and flipping their books, right?
Yeah, we're going to Midtown and places like that and flipping them for store credit. So
that's kind of funny, though. I know it's not funny, but it's funny.
I seem to remember it was like a few people that worked in the company, and maybe they were flipping them because it was money. So I don't know, but that's how it was. Hey, Kenny. So now you get, maybe Marvel gives you the least of anybody, but at least you get one, so you know that it came out.
I know you've always said that DC has been really, they in the past have been really good at kind of keeping the creators flush with stuff.
Well, I think DC's always been DC until now they're owned by AT&T, but the Marvel that I worked for in the 90s is no longer the same company.
Yeah,
because that company went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So this version of Marvel is the third version. I don't know if there was the old Marvel and the Ron Perlman Marvel, the pre-Disney Marvel, and then the Disney Marvel. So I don't know, how all that works, but I have a different creator contract for Darkhawk than I had, because the old one, when the other company went bankrupt. So,
right. And go ahead. No, this is interesting.
So, no, I mean, I was just, most people don't know about stuff like that or how you get comps. But back in the day, you would get, in fact, back in the day, I would get all the Marvels.
Like the whole week, right? The whole month.
The whole month of Marvel. And then for a while, I got all the Marvels, all the DCs, all the first comics. And occasionally I would get some Dark Horse. I know they just toss them in the box. Then you didn't get all the comps. You just got what you did.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from being an administrator and from a business standpoint, I can understand how that's a huge hole in the bucket to just, peel off every guy that worked on a book this month, you know, just in postage alone.
I mean, for them, it's a tax write-off.
It's true. That's very true.
It's not like they're going to say, "Oh, by the way, we've reduced your comps in what you're getting, but you're getting more money per page." Then everybody would be like, "Oh, okay, sure."
But yeah, no more comps.
No.
Well, you know what? I love episodes where we get to talk about, you know, kind of like getting our hands really deep into the pie of the business. I think it's really, it's really enlightening for our viewers and listeners to kind of get this kind of fly on the wall information, which is, and I was telling Jimmy in the green room about this, our podcast is less about fandom and more about the business of being a professional comic illustrator. So if you've
Twitter is for fandom. Twitter is, you have all of Twitter, all of Instagram, all of Facebook for your who's stronger, Hulk or Thor questions.
I see you beat me to it. I was just about to register who'sstronger.net so we can have polls.
Is there a real who'sstronger.net?
I think I just gave it away if there is.
I'm just going to GoDaddy right now. I'm going to go to GoDaddy.
So speaking about the deep dive into the industry, that brings us to our guest for tonight. And before I bring Jimmy in, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. If you look up there at the John, Philadelphia Pride, you know what the John is. It's right above me.
Is that the Whippoorwill of Freedom? That's who sponsors the show?
Whippoorwill! Look over here. Our good buddies at Graphicsly make Clip Studio Paint. That's right. That's Clip Studio Paint. You might be like, well, wait a minute. Not the bootleg Clip Studio. Yes, the real Clip Studio Paint. Our loving sponsors who give us love and sometimes free software. So we may do a contest soon. I was just talking to our contact today, Mike, about maybe doing a webinar over at Graphicsly to promote the show, and maybe we could do a phantom thing with them. We'll talk about it. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And also our good buddy John Morrow, who is the publisher at Tomorrow's Publishing, who publishes Mike's great magazine, Draw, with the exclamation point. Hey to everybody that just came in. If you have never seen this before, let me tell you what's going to happen. Myself and Mike Manley and our guest, Jimmie Robinson, are going to talk shop. And you get to interact if you're good enough. If you have questions, this is
going to be like a thinning of the herd.
That's right.
Battle Royale.
A culling. If you have a question for Jimmy or possibly for the three of us, put it into the chat. I am not going to stop the flow of conversation to ask Jimmy a question that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I'm going to read the room, as they say. And if your question makes sense at that time, I'll bring it in. Sometimes we don't get to them all, but there's always the option of maybe Jimmy will come back later.
Sometimes we purposefully ignore them.
Mike L. Jamal Walton says Hulk is strongest.
I don't think the Hulk is the strongest, actually. I thought the Beyonder was stronger than everybody.
Well, let's leave that on the floor. We're not going to. All right, so let me introduce our guests. So I've met Jimmy a couple of times in person, and we talked about going to cons and kind of like what's happening to the in real life IRL comic book convention as a thing that's starting to slip away. I'm starting to feel like. So I met Jimmy a couple of times, and I've been a fan.
Adieu. Goodbye, former comic conventions. Adieu.
Au revoir, Baba. Au revoir. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. And I also wanted to ask Jimmy about the early internet, because Jimmy may have been the first person I knew that had an email address.
Jimmy at JimmyJohns.
No, this was like back on AOL before the internet.
AOL? Well,
yeah, we're going
Jimmy at AOL, so there you go.
That's right. So prolific comic book illustrator, somebody who I say all the time is extremely underappreciated in this business. Jimmie Robinson has been a mainstay at Image/Shadowline for almost his whole career. But we'll get to talk about that. I'm sure there's things I don't know and things we'll get to learn about him over the course of the podcast. So let's bring him in. Jimmie Robinson, everybody. Woo!
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, bro? I hope I did okay by you.
Totally fine. Totally fine. I like
it. Cool.
Forgot his Major League Baseball career, Jamar.
That's right. Shortstop, Bugs Bunny. Second base, Bugs Bunny. So yeah, welcome, Jimmie. I know everybody's been super busy, and you're probably in the middle of working on stuff. What's on your desk right now? Like, what are you working on?
I'm in the creative mode right now, where I'm trying to pitch a show, a series to Image right now. So I'm looking at all the different story ideas I have set up, and working with Jim Valentino on a few things. And that's where I am right now. I'm in this mode of pulling out all these ideas that I have. This is almost the fun part of it, where you get to really explore, like, well, where can I go with this? Where can I go with that? And then seeing if a publisher likes it.
Well, now, where do you have like a little drawer, like a little vault of ideas? You know, like you draw something, or you get. So what do you do when you get an idea, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have a habit of like, oh, I better write this down, like a dream journal, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you keep track of your ideas?
Yeah, I don't write it down right away. No, I just it'll just bounce around in my head for a while. Ultimately, it'll end up on my computer, where my little folder is like miscellaneous, or I call them other books. Some of these are new ideas, some of them are old ideas that have been revamped, or whatever. But yeah, and some of them are just waiting for their time, because sometimes, as you guys all know, right time, right place, right book.
Right.
Do these include drawings or little sketches or?
No. It's just the writing at this point, and it's just an outline. You know, I love elevator pitches and stuff like that, and I would just put that together.
So what's give people an example of one of your elevator pitches that turned into a series?
Sure. Super villain.
5:15.
Oh, hello, Vina. Yeah, she.
Do not tell him that, Jimmie. That is private information.
Yeah, yeah, just something like super villain protects city against heroes. That reverse superhero, and that's all I'll do. Sometimes I'll just need a key word or a phrase, a turn of a phrase. Sometimes that gets to me. Yeah, I mean, all kind of ways. I've never had the dream thing where I had this great dream until last week, and I did a dream thing. I'm like, wow, that actually could be a comic book story. It was weird. So it was kind of,
to write it down, because you know how dreams are. If you don't write it down, they spread out. You know.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I had to write it down because it was like. It was pretty much Inception meets the Matrix kind of a thing. So it was a dream within a dream about a dreamer who dreams it kind of a thing. And it was really, really bizarre. And the person in the dream doesn't know they're, being dreamt kind of a thing.
Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, more, please.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. So, and it turned into a kind of dream warrior kind of thing where you take this dream and you can go into other people's dreams and fight nightmares and whatnot. And so, because
dream warriors.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those things where sometimes in my head will be like, there's going to be a logical reason why something is going to exist. And in this case, it was sleep. No matter who you are, the Hulk or Thor or whatever, at some point, you will go to sleep. And at some point, that's when you're vulnerable. And if you can be attacked through dreams, that's a whole nother realm. I mean, that's a Doctor Strange thing as well. But still, it's I thought it was an interesting concept. And the publisher kind of liked it too. So I started working there. Matter of fact, let's see. Let's talk shop.
I'm going to give you the whole screen, Jimmy, so we
I
can see.
started throwing together some little character designs.
Okay.
That's cool.
kind of things like that. It's
Oh, wow.
and these are just sketched and stuff. So because sometimes it'll just work with a particular character, and I'll spin off of that. Like with Bomb Queen, it was a particular character, and I spun off of that. So this one was Rabid Rabbit kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And,
now, do you type it up? Do you have a format like so many paragraphs, attach the drawing, and then shoot it out? I mean, how do you go? What's the next step after you have your idea? Then you have to like formalize the pitch to the publisher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm normally putting together character designs, maybe a couple of pages of sequentials, but mostly it's the pitch of the story itself. I don't try to bait a publisher with, oh, I wonder what will happen. I mean, I just tell them everything, beginning to end. There's none of this like what you would see in previews or whatever, where it's, a question, what's going to happen next. It's like, this is the story, this is how it's going to happen, and this is how it's going to end. Mm-hmm. And this is the, I'll sometimes go into, this is going to touch upon, women's rights, or it's going to touch upon racial inequities or stuff like that. And so I just kind of drop those things right along the line. Mm-hmm. I don't actually share a lot up front at first, because there's still a lot percolating in my head.
Right.
But I mean, because I've been with Image for so long, they've kind of we've created a relationship where I'm just kind of informally pitching things. Right. I've done some formal pitching to others, other publishers, but radio silence.
Well,
you
got to know somebody sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of young people have. They will ask you like, well, how do I get my stuff out there? How do I get people to see it? And the biggest difference for people now is that you can just make it yourself and just put it out there, right?
Exactly.
I mean, in the beginning of your career, it was probably pretty hard to try to do something like that, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, that's what I did. I just put it out there. I self-published my stuff. That's before the internet, in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. I did a book called Cyber Zone, bounty hunter in the dystopian kind of sci-fi world with a talking gun. Mm-hmm. And that later became Amanda and Gunn at Image Comics. But in the 1990s, I just self-published it. I just... I grew up in public kind of a thing. I didn't know exactly how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tell a lot of people when they do ask, how to get in, as if it's going to be this perfect way of getting in. And it's like, no, it isn't. And when you do get in, it doesn't mean you're going to stay in. And when you're, trying to stay in, you're going to have to learn and change a lot. And that's what I had to do, was change a lot.
Yeah.
And I tried to stay in. So, I self-published, went to an actual printer, local printer. Did the whole book, I didn't do the whole series. I did 3 issues. And ended up being 8 issues later on, but I did 3 issues before I even went to press with this thing. Mm. And I had to actually tell the printer, this offset printer guy, how to do it, because he had not done comic books before. So it was, it was kind of weird. But the cool thing about it was I actually worked at a printing company.
So you knew,
huh?
You knew the technical side.
Yes. Matter of fact, I worked for a commercial printing company that printed it like in the millions. They printed all the junk mail you would get in your mailbox. All the grocery ads and department store this and whatever. That was our job, and those presses ran 24/7. I mean, it was just insane. But because of that, I knew about offset printing and all that. So I kind of used office supplies sometimes. And where a lot of people would have a problem with, this was back in the days of film.
Ew,
film and goldenrod and ruby lith and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I had to do a lot of the actual getting my hands dirty kind of a thing. But it really helped me get that leap in there, and Quebecor noticed me as well, and I would sing Quebecor complete. Quebecor, for those who don't know, is a printing company that does a lot of comic books, and they also specialized at one time for a lot of independent comic books.
Yeah,
and I used to send them complete files already. When I mean files, I mean flats, as in negatives. Right. Yeah, I would send them already negatives. There's no camera work needed or anything like that, and everything was 100% on the page. You know, hand lettered, drawn, everything inked, and yeah, that was back in the day. And yeah, like Mike says, you can just put it out there. So and nowadays it's even easier. You can and you can get the funding yourself. Just go on Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding thing, and you know, it's great. I think it's wonderful. You know, I did it the hard way. You know?
It's almost scary how easy it is now.
It is,
right. It's almost like if you can't figure out how to create something at this point, you're not trying.
Well, right, and you also don't have the block, because one of the things that people are not faced with now is, so when you or I or Jamar, you go self-publish a book, you'd have to get the distributor to go, okay, you know, there's enough, you've got enough orders, we will actually carry it, which is a small percentage of the total amount of stores.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're going to make any money. You maybe, if you're lucky, you make your money back to print your comic, right? And you're still just printing, you're sending to the people in North America, maybe some in Canada, occasionally some stuff would go to Europe. But now you could draw a comic tonight, go put it on Instagram, everybody in the world sees it.
Exactly.
There's no limit.
Yeah, it was significantly harder, I would say, in their 90s.
Would you say that gave you more discipline? That was like a way to because that's the other thing about doing comics, that I think it looks very appealing, and then you go through that little barrier of drawing what you want, how you want, when you want, to like, oh, now I have to commit and make a massive amount of pages. So like when you sign a deal with Image, they want that book there like every 30 days.
Yeah. I got used to that already. I was just cranking out stuff on my own. I mean, I've got books. I have finished books in my basement that has never seen the light of day. Stuff I drew like page 1 to page 32 or whatever.
Wow.
And I'm like, this sucked. So, you know, I'm not going to pitch this. It's like, this sucked. But I learned a lot from it. And I learned how to go from A to Z constantly. No spotlight. That's how I work. I work chronologically. I don't like to. Some people will say, "Oh, this is going to be the fun page over here. I'm going to start on this action page over here, and then I'll do the, you know, they're sitting at a dinner table over here scene later." I'm from page 1 to the end, chronological order. So sometimes you'll see a progression in my work as I really start to loosen up or figure out things by the time I get to the end of the book. But yeah, it's you know, it is very easy nowadays, and it's nice that you can just put stuff out there like Mike said. But yeah, I also, like Mike said, you know, where's that discipline? You know, is the discipline there or not? And that's kind of hard. I had to learn all that, and you know, I was one of those guys that, you know, I print the whole book, and then I've got like thousands of books sitting in my house that I then have to ship to Diamond to then ship to the stores. So then I was paying, you know, hundreds of dollars to Diamond in shipping. So
and then you've got reorders, and they get like 3 orders.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. My saving grace was that Cyberzone featured a Black lesbian lead, and that appealed to a different demographic outside of the comic industry. So what I got hit up with was college bookstores, gay lesbian community, you know, the independent shops and stuff like that. They're like, well, this is different. So, you know, and I got written up in a couple of, you know, magazines in that arena, and that kind of really worked. And that was a saving grace as well. So it helped me out, again, like Mike was saying, the discipline, because then, you know, yeah, it's just a couple of comics. Somebody wants 3 issues for their store shelf, but you put it out there, you know, you get it out there, you do it. And
so did you have any help or a staff or anybody help you box stuff up, or?
No. Just me.
No software for making the shipping labels or anything, or
No software for making the shipping labels.
You get that Sharpie out.
Yeah, we had these cool labels from the printing company I worked at, which is just peel and stick kind of thing. And so, yeah, I was just making that stuff all out. Speaking of distributors, since I had to ship out to them, Mark Herr, Herr, good guy at Diamond at the time. And he really, I think, helped me out a lot as well, as far as understanding and giving me the realities of how this is working and all that. Because I was just doing all this stuff, and I was just doing it cold. Like I said, I would print the book, and then I'd go to a comic book store and try and do it on consignment. I remember going to here in the Bay Area, there's a nice comic book store called Dr. Comics Mr. Games. Mike Pandolfo's the owner, and I walked in there and showed him and all this stuff, and he's like, "This is cool. Have you put in a diamond?" And I said, "What's a diamond?" I mean, I literally, because I was just so intent in getting a comic book done that I just did it. I didn't do a ton of research.
You didn't know anything about how the comics got into the stores?
Nope, I did not.
And you weren't doing mini comics. You were doing like legit 6x9 floppies, right?
Yeah. Well, with 4-color covers, black and white interiors, 32 pages, saddle stitch, offset, and I just learned everything in public. If I screwed up this, I screwed up that. I fixed it the next issue.
What I love about your story, Jimmy, is that I was thinking like, wow, you're like the prince of comic books. Like you're just making full blown things and you just put them on the shelf, like it's done.
Yeah, I've got a 5-issue graphic novel sitting on the shelf right now. I'm thinking of using it. Doing a Kickstarter with it because I like to do everything, draw, write, all that stuff. It's kind of a problem when between books because like as a writer you could write several books at a time or whatnot, but there's this lull between when I finish a series and the next series kicks up, and I'm just got tired of that dead zone in the middle. And so I figured, well, if I had a complete series all done, that could be going through distribution while I'm working on the next thing. And so I just, on my own, just took liberty to do, all 5 issues of this thing and then show it to the publishers. And then they're like, nah. But that was on me. That was totally on me. So that was my Hail Mary pass or whatever. That was totally me. I wanted to take that shot. I wanted to, have it done, and I wanted to have my say on it in that way.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, in this process, you have your pitch, then you hear back like, "Oh, we like this, but what about this change, or what about that, or how about 4 issues instead of 6?" Or do you get that?
Oh, a few times, but really not much. Image has been great. Jim Valentino, Shadowline, these guys are just great. They really let me run pell-mell. I mean, there's a few times they had to pull me back for my own good. But no, I just there's been very few times where they've said, "Jimmy, this needs a change," or "Jimmy, pull that back," or "Jimmy, no, we don't want to go to court." I gotta respect that because they're the publisher, and that makes sense. So, especially with Bomb Queen, which was a real salacious book, just over the top and violence and sex and content and all that stuff. It was doing its best to be wrong, and I didn't want for those who don't know, this is more a little background stuff. Third Planet Comics that got screwed when Verotica, Glenn Danzig's comic book company, Verotica, made that comic book that got that retailer in trouble because there was that little, I won't call it a sting or whatever, but somebody came in and bought an inappropriate book, and that store went out of business because of that.
Yeah.
Third Planet Comics, Third Planet Comics, and I didn't want to be that kind of a book. I didn't want to be the book that says that got somebody in trouble, and I'm like, no, this is not No.
Yeah, because not every place is liberal like San Francisco. So
that's true. That's true.
We even had to deal with that, and we talked about it before in the podcast. We've had to deal with that withdrawal because you have life drawings, not porn, life drawings, and some guy could come in who's 14 and buy it because he wants, or gal buy it because they want to learn how to draw a figure, and they go home and the parent could be like, what the hell is this? There's a naked person in here? Oh, I'm going right down to the...
That's right. That's all it takes. You know, retailers, they roll the dice a lot, you know, God bless them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that even happened to me. I told this story, I think, before. So I bought the first issue of Heavy Metal when it came out in like 1977. I was 16, almost 16. But that was like adult material because you had nudity and stuff in there. And it was Ann Arbor. My parents are pretty liberal. It's a pretty liberal community. But technically, I was buying an adult magazine as a 15-year-old. Right? And you could even do that even in the drugstores because not everybody knew what Easy Rider was or, you know, whatever. And sometimes you take stuff up, like you couldn't take a Playboy because they go like, kid, you can't buy the Playboy. But you could buy other stuff.
Playboy adjacent.
or like underground comics.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers was.
Exactly. Ton of underground comics. So, you know, I'm used to having my book racked in different places in the comic book stores across the country.
No, do you take that into account because you know that something might have to be bagged or it might affect your sales because it's going to be like you can't just put it next to Iron Man.
I took that into account, but I used it as a little gauge at a roller coaster. Like you have to be this tall to ride this ride. So I made sure the covers did show like this is pushing it. This is not, I don't want to be confused with, you know, a Batman comic sitting on the shelf as well. You know, because sometimes I've seen that. I've seen because, you know, like Bomb Queen, it starts with the letter B for those stores that, you know, alphabetize their titles on the shelf. So, you know, it's right next to what should be considered, you know, teen level book, and it's not. So,
although Batman has shown his ween now.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So he could be next to Batman. It could be like
Spider-Man did it too. So yeah.
Oh, he did? Spider-Man showed his ween?
Yeah. There was that one. He was sitting on the edge of the bed. It was just one panel kind of a thing. But yeah, that happened a while back. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I take that.
I'm so behind on my Marvel continuity. You know, I mean, I know Captain America showed his ween, but that was on the internet.
Oh, I didn't see that one. What are you Googling?
That's very specific.
Oh, Chris Evans showed he sent an inappropriate picture by accident to somebody of him. His, and then that got out on the internet. So
let me bring this back a little bit.
Yeah. Help us, Jamar. Help us.
So, Jimmy, what we kind of touched on was you getting into the business kind of in the pre-internet era, right? And I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this, like you almost being a futurist to some point, using these new technologies like AOL, where you got the CD. This is even before the CD. You had the floppy disk that came in the mail,
right?
And you put that in your.
It came in your newspaper, didn't they? Used to come like in like your Sunday section. You would have like an AOL disc in there. I seem to remember that.
Yeah,
it did. There's so many hours. Like here's 16 hours. There's 20 hours. There's 40 hours.
Right. So tell us a little bit about maybe how you decided on this day and this year, I'm going to start doing comics, and then how you started doing a really early kind of poke at social media, right? It's like you were on AOL doing things and being in the comics forums and stuff. So maybe talk a little bit about the beginning.
Yeah, again, this was, you know, trying to find other communities outside of the comic industry to pitch my books, my wares, or show that I have something going on. So there was a lot of lesbian forums that liked my books. So I was like the token guy in a lot of the, you know, female only forums sometimes. pretty fun. But yeah, poking into social media was, I don't know. I just saw the writing on the wall. Like AOL was just like a Disneyland. It was like a walled, gated community. And I knew that was like the wider world was like, there's a www out there, and I just wanted to hook up with as many people as possible. Mike might remember this. There used to be a thing called the master retailer list.
Yes.
Yes. and reaching all of them, they had emails and stuff like that, or they had, PO boxes and all this stuff. So I was doing my best to reach all of them so I could like individually send them books. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I discovered a lot of weird things about the internet, and I used it at my advantage, and turned it around when I go to conventions. I used it and all this kind of stuff like that. But it was in the '90s. It was weird because not everybody was on board.
Yeah,
I remember going to the ProCon series. There used to be a convention, like a real convention, where only professionals attended. It was no fans allowed. It was called ProCon.
Yeah, I went. So we might have seen each other there. Who knows?
Which one did you go to?
I went to a couple of them before it moved.
In Oakland, then.
In Oakland, yeah.
Yep, that's where I was at. I was in Oakland. That's where I first got over in there. But whatever. And I remember, oh my God, how could I forget his name? Scott McCloud. I remember Scott McCloud getting up there, and he had like a whole hour session trying to tell everybody about how the internet was going to be the next thing we need to think about. And he got ripped to shreds. I mean, everybody was in there, just Marv Wolfman in them, and they were just like, "This, you can't do that. How can you just put comics on the internet without paying? Who's going to own the rights? It was these two worlds colliding. It really was. And I mean, poor Scott McCloud, he was, trying to get it across.
I warned you all!
Exactly. And
before he steps back through his time portal.
I know, really. Wish I could go back in time. And I'd jump on the But yeah, I mean, stuff like that really helped open my eyes to where a lot of the direction was going. It was just, and also I kind of think I was on this little cutting edge split between when the internet came and when the old stuff left. That printing company that I worked on, I was there for like 13 years, and they had a thing called the Repronic 2000, and there was only like 12 of these machines in the entire country. And basically, this was like the old science fiction black and whites where there's the computer and there's a whole wall, a whole bank of spinning things going on. that, and basically what it was Photoshop. It was Photoshop before Photoshop. And one of the accounts we had was Playboy. And this is back in the day when people use the term, "Oh yeah, they airbrushed that model." This was where that came from. Besides, actually airbrushing literally on the film. On the negatives and all, there was a computer system called the Repronic 2000, and I was one of the operators that learned it. And so I learned color theory and a lot of that stuff digitally before Adobe came out with Photoshop. And then Photoshop came out and changed everything. And that was really weird seeing like a multi-million-dollar machine that took up an entire room
just go
gone away by this one disc on Photoshop. It was amazing. And that room that I used to work in, I used to come in a suit and tie and all that stuff. And that room that I work in became a storage room.
So did they actually just like get rid of it? Send it back?
What happened to it? Yeah.
It became a storage room. It was so huge. It was literally the room. It's like walking into the mother bank or something. Like you're in 2001 and HAL is all around you. This is like, and there's this one screen in the middle, and that's where you work on files and stuff, and you can color correct and stuff like that, which was like magic back then. And all the companies would, send stuff in and like, we like this card, we want it to be green, we like this, we like Safeway, the grocery market over here on the West Coast. They used to always send us stuff like, yeah, well, we need to put more grapes on there, like, add more grapes or cut all the fat off of the steak, stuff like that, because it became possible, and we were taking that to the next level. It was really
You were like George Jetson. Work, 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 work.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I had this huge. I mean, I wish I had a picture of it, but yeah, it was back in the day.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, and that tied into the internet as well. So
right.
I learned a lot of that stuff. So Jamar, you're asking about how I got in early. It was because I was working in the industry where this was starting to become like direct to plate. Digital information, going from film to digital to plate. I was there. I used to make plates. I was a plate guy. I when I was in that company, like I said, for 13 years, I started by sweeping on the bindery floor. I learned saddle stitching and bindery trimming before anything else. Then I went to the plate room, where I was making plates that ran on the offset presses. And then from there, I became what's called a stripper, which is a negative stripper, which you take film, ruby, goldenrod, ruby lith, all that stuff, and you put all the percentages together, 20% yellow, 10% red, all this stuff, to create these other colors. And you did it in all these different sheets and all these layers. And went, I didn't put together an entire catalog. And it was, and from there, then I went to the Repronic system, which was the next cool thing. And then from there, like I said, the digital divide hit, and it just, the world changed. It really did.
People ran to that to get rid of all the chemicals. Because I'm from the same world too, because that's what I learned to do in high school. I had a job like that. Was an art director of a paper in Detroit. Did all the time, did the same thing. Learn how to key line, paste up, make the negative, burn the plate, put it on the machine, print the stuff, collate it, bind it, deliver it to the, so yeah. But
you're talking my language,
yeah. But as soon, and comics was like the last gasp of that, because everybody was kind of resisting that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's much longer than other magazine printers. They went right to it.
That's true. I remember when in the 90s, when all this new coloring techniques and stuff was printed on Baxter paper and all this stuff, and it's just like, oh my God, I gotta buy this book. And it's like, probably like the most flimsy little thing, but the colors were just outstanding. It was like a whole new realm where there's those gradations and stuff now. Yeah. Fading and all this stuff. It wasn't just stuff out of register because it was cut wrong. It was a pretty interesting time.
It's 5:45.
And it's fine. Yes.
And the funny thing about all of this is that it wasn't that long ago. And you can see how quickly the digital stair step moved up. Now to talk about this with maybe any young people that are listening are like, what are you talking about? What? I can edit things on my cell phone. You know what I mean? You have the editing suite on your phone now.
Although that's become that stuff, the artifact of that old file type of printing has become like a cool thing now. People make filters to make your stuff look like it's off register, and that's become an aesthetic now.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting seeing it come all the way back around full circle.
So Jimmie, tell me about any contemporaries that you were bouncing off of when you started self-publishing. Were you like going in as cold? Did you know any other comic book creators? Or
I knew nothing. Nothing. I mean, I was one of those guys where the comic book people would get together and they start dropping names and start dropping, issue numbers and events and story arcs, and I'm like, I didn't know. I was in my own little world, and it was really weird. But I still want to be part of the comic book industry, and so I didn't have specific names or anyone I specifically followed, and that's why my style was so different in certain ways, because I didn't have a house style. I mean, Michael know this, back in the days, if you didn't have that house style for Marvel, DC, whatever, it was really hard to get in. I mean, it really was. So, I mean, nowadays you see, you know, X-Men and all kinds of, you know, drawn in crayon and stuff. It's just great. It's nice seeing all these different new techniques. But back in the day, no. And I just could never capture that house style. My stuff was a bit too linear. It was a bit too. A lot of people thought it was mechanical, but because I just drew straight lines and circles and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, that's just how I draw and whatnot. And
now, you weren't collecting or following certain artists or comics at all back then?
No, matter of fact, I have a cool story. I had a comic book angel when I was in my late teens. My mom used to work for Southern Pacific Railroad, and there was a guy who also worked there in the control towers, but he also owned a comic book store.
Oh.
And he learned through my mom that I was drawing and trying to make comics, and he would send me comic books from his store with little Post-its tagged on it, like, look at the coloring here, look at this highlight shadow, look at this composition, stuff like that.
Wow.
And, I would get, like, you know, these like dozen books a week, you know, of this guy who I never met, you know, through my mom. And he was just this cool guy who wanted to see me, I guess, who just wanted to help me or whatever. And because of that, I never really followed any particular artist or storyline, because he would just send him all these different books, what he thought might be interesting, like, look at the backgrounds here, you know, or look at this lettering, or this is not how to do it, look how bad this is, you know. He just, it was cool. But it was also, I was getting all these books all over the place, so I didn't have that one that really drew me in, you know. Right. So that was part of my upbringing. It was weird. And again, I was just learning it all on the ropes.
So almost to that effect, it's kind of like I say this a lot, you kind of like zoomed out and looked at comics as this kind of like a grand scope of styles rather than being a fan of Ghost Rider.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's what happened. And I saw comics as a medium that could do all kinds of things. Because, you know, sometimes this comic book angel, whatever his name was, I have no idea. He would send me, you know, indie books too. You know, the guy that did Shuriken, that black and white comic back in the day.
Oh, Reggie Byers.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna have Reggie on in a couple weeks. Yeah. Right
on. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. Going like, I have never seen this comic. What the hell is this? And then, you know, I'm like, wow, this is cool. So yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, of course, that's also, you know, the end of the 80s, I think it was, the black and white boom hit.
Right.
90s, all that stuff. And, you know, so my whole scope was, yeah, pulled back in a different way, where I didn't have the traditional comic upbringing of sorts, but I knew enough and I studied enough. You know, Draw magazine, Comic Scene, those books, Comics Buyer's Guide.
Yeah,
you know, those are my places I would go to. You know, I had learned just the little techniques here and there. I mean, the very first thing I had printed was in Comics Buyer's Guide for Cat Ironwood's print.
Wow.
Yeah.
Print. She always asked for people to draw a little header for her column every week, and I drew a little dog of sort, and she used it, and that was my first.
Your first published piece.
Yeah, first published something, whatever.
Hey, Jimmy, Sean asked, did you ever meet your comic book angel?
No.
Wow.
Don't know his name. I think I know his store, but at that time it might have been passed on to somebody else. And when I talked to my mom about it, she's like, I think I remember that. You know,
right.
What are you talking about? I had like dozens and dozens and dozens I had like long boxes full of these comics with Post-its all over it. And she's like, well, yeah, there was something there. But I think she just collected them and just handed them to me. My mom was very supportive. I love her. And she really wanted to see me do what I wanted to do. And that was cool. She still does. And yeah, I think she just got to the point where she's like, well, okay, this is for Jimmy. I'm going to just hand this to Jimmy. So, yeah. And I just did my thing.
Did you have a illustration background? Like you talked a lot about your jobs, but did you go to school, study art at all?
Sorta. I went to an art magnet program here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
There was an art magnet program specifically for people with some talents. So there was, it had like at most like 60 kids in the school.
Mm.
So they had a programming. Something like this just doesn't exist anymore, and it was just all art based. So you learn math, English, everything, but with an art twist to it, kind of a thing.
Mm.
And you got to hang out with other artists, as I'm talking like grade school. It's like, and then that turned into a junior high and all that. And I met, some cool people there. Mark Bode, who's Von Bode's son.
Yeah.
He's Wizard, all that stuff. He's really cool. The Gerbages and all this. I mean, there's all these people that were really cool. Dan Senaris, he worked on The Matrix and stuff like that. I mean, this guy is, I really look up to them now. And that was the only real training, you might say. That was,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just always just dabbled enough that I just.
Well, the reason I asked is it seems like a lot of our guests on the show come from a couple of different lanes. Either they were comic strip fans,
Mm-hmm.
right, who kind of fumbled their way into comic books, or they were maybe animation fans or something like that. There's usually some sort of like matrix code that a lot of cartoonists follow to kind of be on the path that they're on. So it's interesting. Like my thing's a little like that. Like I was a comic strip guy, and I didn't really know much. I knew comics, but I didn't like devour them when I was a kid. So it's always interesting to me to find creators who do full form comic books without that kind of background in it to like tell stories in that way. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
I since I was a child, since I was a kid, I always just made comics. I would watch the Flintstones and stuff like that, and I would draw a picture of my favorite scene in the cartoon, and then I'd have to draw the next scene and the next scene after that, and I was making sequential comics, and I didn't know it. I was just drawing pictures, and then ultimately I'd staple them together or something like that and show them to my friends. But no, I didn't grow up with comics, and I didn't have that illustrator background or go to school specifically to learn anatomy. I'm still learning anatomy. Trust me. Trust me.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your self-publishing, Ben, and then maybe if there's a story about how you kind of fell in with Image and Jim and all of that. But our new buddy Sean Stiff, who started off this by saying, "Oh shit, Jimmie Robinson," asked a really good question about one of your old books. Sean says, "I love The Empty. What inspired you to make that post-apocalyptic comic?" Maybe you could talk about it a little bit. It was so good, and I was so sad when it was over.
I actually had like 20 issues of that outlined. I got up to didn't get enough done on that. What inspired me was I wanted to do a fish out of water story. I really did, and I wanted to have a different kind of people come together who didn't know each other at all. And it was also based on the concept of the haves and the have-nots. So in this world, like 99% of the world is just like empty. It's like the desert. It's like whatever. And then there's this 1% of the world, like an island or whatever. It's just lush green and everything. And they've completely evolved in different ways on that island. To the point where their eyes were starting to go to the sides like deer because, they didn't have to be predators anymore. It was like this total weird thing, and their necks got elongated and all this stuff. Whereas in the other realms, people evolved differently. Their arms got extended and all this stuff. And I just wanted to pull that together. And then it became a kind of Wizard of Oz thing where they were in search of a mythical something. And that's where the Empty came together, where it was a journey for these characters to get to someplace. It's the typical Wizard of Oz kind of a thing. You got your little crew, and instead of a yellow brick road, there was these poisonous pipes that apparently the rest of the world was being destroyed by because this 1% was using. They're basically tapping into the energy of the planet to make their little place green. And then we find out later on, well, I'm going to give everything away, but we find out later on there's a big twist and reveal in it. And yeah, I just wanted to do something different because at that point I was doing Bomb Queen a lot. And I'm always trying to do something different. And I normally judge it by what I don't see on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't see a book like that, then I'm like, I'm gonna make a book like that. You know, if I didn't see a book for my daughter, I made, you know, this kid's book, Evil and Malice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stuff like that. If I didn't see, you know, enough anime or manga, then, you know, I worked with Shea Gilson to make Avagon. You know, if I didn't see enough books about racial injustice, then I went for Power Lines. You know, and Bomb Queen was a thing, you know, because it was about villains. I was getting tired of wimpy, anti-hero type, really not true villains, sympathetic, you know, kind of things. And I wanted to do something that was like a real villain who did win all the time, completely reverse the genre there. So that, you know, the Empty was just another one of those things. You know, same thing with Five Weapons was another one as well. I wanted a hero that was weak.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted him to be smart, not strong. So, you know, in a gunfight with Sherlock Holmes, you would still bet on Sherlock Holmes, even without a gun. and so I wanted a character that was smart, and I wanted to play on that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with The Empty. It was just another one of those times in my life where I needed to do something really different than my last thing and what I didn't see on the shelf.
Great. That was a great answer. Thanks. Mike, did you want to ask Jimmy something? I'm loading up the next question here.
Oh, okay. When you do you pitch more than one idea? When you do that, do you say like, "Oh, here I have like 3 or 4 ideas," or do you just pitch one idea at a time?
It's one idea. I will when I'm at a point of pitching something, I'm into it. And I will work that thing from A to Z. I'll know everything, and if I'm asked a question, I can answer it, and all that. And yeah, I'm not too much into throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
I will work with a specific, like I just was working with Image today, and it's well, we like this part, but not that part, and that's cool, you know, and all that. And this is good, you know, and all that, you know, but. If it didn't work, it didn't work. And that was the only thing I was pitching. You know, I mean, later on, then I pitched something else, but it was still one at a time. It wasn't like I got these 4 or 5 ideas. You know what, Mike? The only time I did have to do that, and I think about it, was when I worked for Marvel, when I wrote Wolverine. I wrote a Wolverine what-if story, and the editors contacted me and said, dude, have you ever thought of working for Marvel? You know, and I'm like, sure. What do you got? And they're like, well, give us some pitches. So I had to come up with all these story ideas for all these that, you know, and all these different scenarios, and let them cherry pick it. And ultimately, it came down to, well, have you thought about doing Wolverine? I'm like, if you knew we wanted to do Wolverine, why don't you just ask me?
Just ask me
in the first place.
Right.
But that was the only time, Mike, when I actually did throw everything against the wall, because I was just going through a lot of the Marvel library characters, trying to find angles.
Right.
Yeah, trying to find things they haven't done yet. And then, because this was 2006, it was right at the edge of the big Marvel movies or whatnot. And so it became not just what I could do with Wolverine, but what will happen with Wolverine 2-3 events from now and the movies. So there was a lot of things I couldn't do.
Yeah, I think that's something that's definitely different now than the 80s and the early 90s. I mean, you had a lot of pasture to go in, and now it's like you got to walk down these very specific corridors because you can't use this character because that character is going to be in something with Disney, but we can't tell you what. You know, there's a lot of that stuff. I mean, that's why the last big time was the 80s, early 90s, when they were creating all those characters. But now it's where, it's got to tie into Civil War. It's got to tie into this other thing. So you don't get to like run out in the field and just say, hey, how about this thing? They're like, yeah, well, that Captain America is dead now.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're dead. You're dead on him. Right. That was the problem I kept running up against, and I threw a ton of stuff at him. There's some stuff I'd still like to do with the character Venus. I love to work on the character Venus in Marvel, having the power to manipulate emotions, love. I would think every character at some point somehow wants to be loved in some kind of way.
Right.
And if you can use that, you can become very powerful. That could be a really cool book. I did get to kind of go running pell-mell with Wolverine because it was a what if book. So I got to do what if enemy of the state. So the enemy of the state line where Hydra has brainwashed Wolverine, I believe. And it was the what if Wolverine never got deprogrammed and still went on his rampage, killing everybody in the Marvel universe. So I kind of did this. I took it at a horror kind of a slasher film take.
Right.
So I basically created an island. I'm somewhere in the Marvel encyclopedia where there's a little island in the Pacific that Jimmy created that I actually have ownership with, that if Marvel ever uses it again, they have to contact me about. But yeah, I put it on an island. I made it a 10 Little Indians, kind of a thing where Wolverine was hunting down some of the last remaining superheroes in the DC universe, where it came down to trapping them. And I just ultimately put it to the Kitty Pryde Wolverine mix. That's for those who really know some Wolverine origins, that's some of the real hard stuff there. Yeah. And it's the ultimate, the guy that hits everything and cuts it versus the person who can go through anything, the ethereal person. So yeah, and it was also about their relationship and stuff as well. So it came down to that, and that was the only time I got to go running, because I got to kill Spider-Man, and I got to kill Captain America, and I got to kill Luke Cage. I mean, I just was killing all these characters, and I was having fun. And that's something you don't get to do often. But it was a and yeah, you get to do that in what ifs. Mike, what have you thrown stuff against the wall like that to anybody? I mean,
for myself, but not for them. I think the last time, when I was working at Marvel doing Darkhawk, I realized that it's one thing if they approach you and you create something that they're saying, we're going to give birth. Do you want to put the face on it? Right? We're already pregnant. We're going to give birth now. We had this other guy come in and we didn't like the face he gave. So you want to put the face on it? But it does not behoove you to do that for them, because now, just business-wise, it doesn't, because again, if you create something, you only get money if it's in a book called Darkhawk. Or sometimes it's on a TV show, and sometimes it's in a game. And I explained this before to people. It's like in the contract, it says what constitutes an action figure. If it didn't have 6 points of articulation, they didn't feel they had to pay you money for it.
Wow. Seriously?
Right? Yeah, so there's all this stuff in the contracts, right? And so even if so like with Wolverine, you created Wolverine and he's in every damn comic every month, you only get money if he's in Wolverine. You don't get money if he's in Captain America. Right. And if they reprint that series where he fights Captain America, well, you don't get money for that. You get money if he's in your book. So if Mike Mignola had created Hellboy for Marvel or DC, he wouldn't be Mike Mignola.
True.
Right. True. And now that whole Pangea it's all gone. So you're doing the best thing by creating content for yourself, jumping over and working on stuff for them because of what you've already done. So they know who you are. They know why they want to work with you. It's completely different than trying to go in and throw stuff against the wall that Disney's going to say, yeah, sure, yoink.
Yeah, we'll take that idea. Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah. Because after Marvel, I went right back to doing my own work. I'm like, thanks, that was fun. Going back.
Did you feel you pulled people from Marvel readers to support your personal, your own thing at Image?
Not really. No. I think because it was just a what if. It wasn't like a run, where I got to get readers on my side. It was, I mean, some people come up and they're like, they talk about it every now and then at conventions, but it wasn't enough. I don't think it was enough, Mike, to get me like a following of, to pick up my other books. So,
and I
keep changing gears on my books. So, sometimes I'm doing myself a disservice by doing the empty and then doing Power Lines and then doing 5 Weapons, these, dramatically different books. And, as opposed to sticking to, this one good one that would, gain enough readers, or a spinoff of that good one, kind of a thing.
Right. So is that almost kind of like the idea that, and I think all of us have kind of gathered fans over the years who are fans of one thing that you've done. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you have Jimmy fans, right? I know you have Jimmy fans. Mm-hmm. You have Jimmy fans, you have Jimmy Kitty fans.
Jimmy Kitty fans.
Your Hello Kitty fans. And, then you probably have Bomb Queen fans. Mm-hmm. Right? And
yes.
Right. And I'm sure you have people that come up to you and go, oh, this is great. When's more Bomb Queen? But you're working on something else.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, armchair quarterbacking to say things like, well, if you just did more Bomb Queen, it's just like you have to follow your own bliss, I guess. Right.
Follow my own list?
Bliss. Like I'm saying, it's like you've done a lot of Bomb Queen. It's really popular, and I think maybe as far as the mainstream goes, people know Bomb Queen probably out of most of your stuff.
Yeah.
But if you did, issue 300 of Bomb Queen, would it feel the same for you, or is like what do you get out of producing your books? Like, is it a body of work? Is it a volume? Is it just a story you needed to tell at that moment in time?
Yeah, it's the story I needed to tell at that moment in time. It really is. Yes, like Bomb Queen, for example. Bomb Queen was created during the George Bush era, Iraq, Halliburton, stuff like that. It came out of that, waterboarding, Guantanamo, all this stuff. That's where that villain aspect came from, of sanctioned violence, and so it became this whole thing where I'm like, oh, cool. Well, what if there was a villain that was sanctioned by the government that, ran a city where all the criminals went, which made, Main Street safer because all the criminals would go there, right? and it became, the simple superhero question, well, who protects that city? Superman has Metropolis, Batman has Gotham, and what if the villain had a city? So this villain, Bomb Queen, has a city and she protects it from superheroes. It's completely different, right? and the whole shtick is obviously, heroes trying to come in and clean up her town, or the government trying to take it back because she's too powerful now. And that was, like I said, from the George Bush era. So there's the whole government involvement there with the sanctioned, organized violence. And then, then Obama got elected. That completely turned everything around. And I'm like, wow, I can't do Bomb Queen now. But then I still ended up doing it because, again, at the time, Obama would not let a city like that stand. And so that became the new point in Bomb Queen, was fighting against the president that doesn't want it sanctioned. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. And all the way, then this, that, and now we're at Trump. And so it's the same thing. There it is.
Hold on, let me give you the screen.
Oh, there it is.
That's great.
Bomb Queen Trump thing. So and now Trump's gone. So there's no need for Bomb Queen again.
Is he?
Yes, true. Is he? That's true. Is he? Matter of fact, I pitched a new Bomb Queen with the Kamala Harris tie-in kind of a thing. And it was a Trump. Trump was still involved with it, so it's basically Trump was coming back to ask Bomb Queen for help. It's kind of this weird twist around again, because with Bomb Queen, you have to think backwards. You know, she's
Right.
against I'm against everything she stands for, but I have to write for her. So
that's funny. I think about it's such a great flip, right? And I think sometimes people want comic book creators to just boil down something. It's like, what if Superman was black, right? And, but there's so many nuances and things like that you're doing that that ask questions that maybe people weren't thinking about before. So I think it's really poignant work. It reminds me. This is a weird thing. A lot of people know I'm a video game guy, and there was this game called Evil Genius. Where have you heard of that?
I have. I used to write video game reviews.
Oh, I didn't know that, Jimmy.
Yeah, for GameCritics.com.
Oh wow. I don't know what kind of score that game was, but the gist is that you were like a evil genius, like Dr. Evil or something. You have a mountain lair, and you have to protect your lair from the James Bonds of the world that were trying to come in and thwart you. So you had minions and death traps, and I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, so it's a tower defense game you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's the concept, I should say. Tower defense. Yeah. Cool. Right on.
Well, it's super old, but it's just like I just think even the idea of being the villain for a second just makes you think about things in a different way.
Yeah. Well, with Bomb Queen, I tried to really twist it though, because you shouldn't be rooting for her. She's the bad guy. She's villain. She's evil, and no matter what evil thing I made her do, people still ate it up. And there were some people in Bomb Queen that got it. It's a satire. I'm poking fun at all this.
Right.
And there's people that said, "Oh, Leah, Bomb Queen killed that baby gay." So it became but as a creator, as you guys know, it's not up to you to dictate how the reader interprets things.
It's super true. That's super
true. They will interpret things you had no idea. Like you look at what they will write about something and you go like, how did they get to there from here?
Right. Right. That's right. It can be. I remember Cyberzone thing I self-published in the 90s. There was this one scene where the character has to eat something, and she said, it tastes like eggshells or whatever. And it was just the sustenance to get her out of the sewer or whatnot. And my friend wrote to me this whole Joseph Campbell-esque rebirth of the symbol of the egg and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow. And because she was in the sewer, it's like the unconscious and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. That guy went on the right for Disney.
Wow.
Yeah, he Brian Swinland, really good guy. Really, I love him. He wrote Return of Jafar, which was the first direct to DVD for Disney that really hit it out the park and changed Disney's whole parameters on, we only make feature films. I'm like, oh, dude, we could also make DVDs. We could also go straight to home video. It's he's still working for Disney, I believe. Good guy, Brian Swinland. Yeah.
So did you change any of your? Do you change your style at all to fit the different books? Do you feel like I need to not use blacks, or I need to use blacks, or I need to have a crumbly line, or I need to not have panel borders, or I need to make the balloon shapes different? Or
I will I will change certain technical things. I'm telling you, Mike, I try to draw differently as much as possible. I try to get that gritty style, and my work's still kind of too clean sometimes and all that. But yes, like you were saying, I will drop certain things. Like somebody asked about the Empty. The Empty had no word balloons. It was free floating text. And so as an artist, I had to always do the composition of every panel that would make sure there was open space for free floating text that just had like a line going to the person speaking. And so that was a whole different way of thinking about it, because if it's a word balloon, opaque, you can just slap it anywhere.
Right.
But text is just going to float. You have to make sure it's not going to be hit at all by any background that's going to distort it at all. And I just that put me in a different mode, Mike, where I was like, okay, this book is going to be like this. And same thing with because I wanted it like that, because I wanted more color on the page. Sometimes I'll pick up a comic book and I love all the dialogue. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But when I see tons of white word balloons, I'm not getting immersed in that world sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not there with Batman in the dead of night with all these white word balloons sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I did that with the empty. With 5 weapons, I did every panel in a horizontal tier. So, and for that thinking, it was because when I go to the movies, the screen never changes.
Mm-hmm.
Only the camera work changes. And so I thought, well, you know what? Yeah, why not? So that makes sense. And because of that, I had to think then of left to right, because I can't have people talking over each other certain ways.
Right.
You start left to right. And at the same time, I had to drop certain clues because it was a mystery story. And it was how the eye followed across the page. And that was another example of, you know, this book's going to be different this way. And it was going to only be pencil. I wasn't going to ink it. And, you know, just stuff like that. So, yeah, Mike, I will try. You know, I'm trying right now to do some more grittier stuff with a book called Expired. And that's, you know, like a serial killer thing, you know, gritty, urban stuff. And, you know, I don't know. I might try to find an artist for that.
Now, when you're talking about changing styles, do you change your tools? Do you use a brush instead of a pen, or use a crumbly old, certain kind of pen versus?
Yeah. I'll use different tools. I really will. I'm constantly buying pens and brush pens and pencils from jetpens.com. I love jet pens.
Jamar is always buying stuff from them, right?
Yeah,
you're like a big jet pen guy.
There you go. Yeah, right. Yeah, there they are, right there.
Yeah, that's my spot. Yeah.
So I'm always playing around with stuff, but yeah, I will try to get texture in there but like I said, Mike, I try, and it's hard to break my style sometimes. That's so ingrained in me. It's tough.
I know that. I remember when I was experimenting around. Now, most people do line, then brush, like line, then the blacks, or the brush and then the blacks, and then you bolt. But there's a way of also doing the brushwork first, and then doing the pen, and it reverses your idea because you think about the shadow shapes without paying attention to the contour. And if you can read it with just the shadow shapes, right, the contour will define the edges of the borders of some figures and things. But if you can read it with just the shadow shapes, you can have any kind of line. You get rendering or no rendering, or
isn't that used in animation for storyboards a lot, Mike? I mean,
I think that's more of it's more of the old style of sort of like Kniff and Sickles for the strips back in the day, where you would have a thin line. It was more illustrative, so you'd have a thin line, and then the blacks would indicate the light, the shadows. And a lot of the early strips didn't have a lot of rendering, but they had the line, like what eventually in Europe turned into the line clair, the clear line, where you'd have just a clear contour line. Sometimes it didn't have a lot of width change.
Yeah.
They would just put blacks in. So just like a different process of drawing or inking might lead you to a different solution.
Yeah, I think the only time I really pushed it in leaning that direction, not that I went there, was with the series Power Lines. I wanted a watercolor effect because I was looking for the gritty stuff, and I was using the highlights and shadows because it's watercolor. I mean, it's Photoshop, but still, I'm using that to create form. and less dependent on the inks and pencils and whatnot. That's the closest I can say I got to anything like that. But still, I kind of started leaning on my old ways by issue 3. But still, try to do whatever I can, and I appreciate all different forms of art that are trying to use different mediums. I was the Eisner judge 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was an Eisner judge, and so I got to see a serious wealth of what was being offered that particular year, and I was just amazed at stuff people were doing and what they were doing it with, fully painted books, or just like a Chinese brush, kind of effect, or just linear, or minimalist. It was just some beautiful stuff out there, and all the stuff on the internet as well. Some really great things going on, and that really opened my eyes up to a lot of different styles and techniques. I haven't done anything like that. That's the thing with me, is I can see something, I can look at Mike's work, I can look at Jamar's work, I can look at all this stuff, love it, but then it won't come back with me. I won't take anything from it. I don't, it doesn't show up in my work. I'm like, oh, I just love that stuff. That Mobius stuff is great. I just can't do it.
I have a couple questions from the room, and this has been a very amazing conversation, Jimmy. How you feeling? I didn't ask you earlier. You doing good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, cool.
I have a corgi. The dog is here too.
Like right on cue.
Oh yeah, somebody's delivering something.
Oh yeah, that's the alarm. Who needs a ring bell when you
exactly? I have a corgi bell.
All right.
I have a corgi bell.
One of our good buddies, Eternity Forever, you have to say the name like that, asked Jimmy, what type of research do you do when you're looking to switch from one genre to another?
Oh yeah, dude. How much time do we got? I that's one thing I will. I love research, man. I mean, I dig. I will pull so much stuff together, stuff that'll never even hit the page. It'll only be in my head, and I'm sorry, my wife just. Are you okay, honey? Okay. Yeah, research. I will dig. I mean, I will literally dig for every meaning and every nuance, every name, the meaning behind names, the meaning behind cities, town names, the meaning, the stories, concepts. I will just go right down the line. The research. I will dig really hard, and a lot of people won't even know it, but that's okay. And it will change for each book. Yeah. Sometimes it'll involve actually going places. My wife and I went to Briones regional park. To figure out the power lines, because it has to deal with like ley lines, the land, and all that stuff. And, you get that when you're there, but that's the kind of research not everyone's going to do. They're just like, oh yeah, this is just going to draw some trees. It's like, right. Yeah. What does it really look like, and were you really there, and and the composition of the dirt and everything. It's just a lot of, I find a lot of fun, right down to the Latin meaning of words and all that. So
right. Yeah, that's interesting, and especially because we live in this world now where you can just Google anything, but there's something that's missing from a Google Earth image of you actually being in the space and feeling. Even I would say things to people once in a while, like, you really need to go see some of the wonders of the world. Go see the Grand Canyon and just see how big that is, and see how small you feel all of a sudden. It puts a lot of things into perspective. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Stuff like that, I think is I think it helps a lot. I think it can help a lot.
It's sort of, I guess, like an actor. Yeah, I guess it's like an actor preparing for a role. You invest all that stuff, and it's like it helps create the atmosphere or the feeling or attune you to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like you asked before, do I pitch a lot of ideas at once? And I'm like, no, I'm on that one idea, and that's because I researched the hell out of that idea. that's the one I'm working on. So, with 5 weapons, the pacifist in a school for assassins, that and he keeps winning because he's using the 6th weapon, which is the mind, as opposed to being dependent upon your weapon. So, and that comes from, the Buddhist story of Prince 5 Weapons, who, went and learned all these things about, all these different weapons, and then went into this forest and ran into this monster. And then every weapon he used, the monster just rebuffed until he figured out how to break him mentally. And that's the 6th weapon. And that's the weapon that really matters the most. And that's why it was called 5 weapons, because it's an invisible 6th weapon. And that's, that kind of research, like this Buddhist fable, is just like the kind of things I just love. And I will dig in. And for that, I went to books. I'm like, forget the internet. There's plenty of books I could pick up. And just picked up some other books about Guatemala because I was working on a story about where characters from Guatemala. That's all I won't bring the whole book. But yeah, they're from Guatemala, and because of that, I learned all these things about Guatemala that then twist the story in a different direction. That was that kind of discovery is cool, where you have what's called happy accidents, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
working for the happy accident.
Yeah,
I have another one from Return to Teens. They're just nailing us down with these. Jimmie, how do you figure out what your audience is going to be for a particular story?
I'm the audience. It's me. It's me. Yeah. If I don't want to do this, I'm not doing it, kind of a thing. I mean, I've tried to work sometimes with other people, and I've screwed up. I blew it because I wasn't really there. It wasn't me. I wasn't in it. And so, it's just me, and I'm hoping you'll like what I did. I mean, sometimes I'll say, yeah, this is for this kind of person. That I'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing it, it is just for me. It is like something, like I said before, I don't see that on the shelf. I want to see that on the shelf. I want to see something like that on the shelf. Or what if something like this had changed? And that's because I'm thinking of it. I'm not thinking of the trends or what's popular at the time.
Right.
To find the right audience to get sales. So a lot of my books are not huge sellers, but I'm doing my books. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
That's a great answer. And I wanted to, before we run out of time, because we're almost out of time, Jimmie, where'd the time go? That's going to be the new name of the show. Where'd the time go? With Mike and Jamar. I really want to kind of talk about your start with Image and Shadowline, because the Image that you came into isn't the one that I think everybody is familiar with. I think a lot of people are really familiar with the new era Image with like Saga and all those kind of like Walking Dead and those bangers. And then there was like early Image where it's like, no feet, smoke and rubble comic covers. Right. But you were kind of like in the first third, like the second third of the beginning of Image. When Jim came in. So can you talk a little bit how you got involved and how they became your publisher?
Yeah, I got to
it's 6:30.
I got to issue 8 in my self-published series Cyberzone. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to kind of call in the towel for a while because this is not really working like I thought. And this, that, and the other. And in a great amount of hubris, I just kind of wrote this industry letter. I don't know, was it going to CBG or something? Whatever. I wrote this industry letter saying, I'm done for now.
Wow.
And then, like the Christ model, 3 days later, Image is calling. They're like, Jimmie, don't quit. Just bring that over here, kind of a thing. And that person was Jim Valentino.
Wow. And
Jim Valentino was a publisher at Image Comics at the time. And he created what was called the non-line. NON-line, because at that time it was, like you said, Jamar, it was superhero, the Image model, of this particular type. And Jim Valentino is an indie guy, and he's like, I want black and white books that have no superheroes in them. And so he's the one. I mean, when people think about Image now, you should be thanking Jim Valentino. He's the one that put certain things on the map, like The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where that started. Valentino just asked me straight up. He's like, you know, dude, you don't have to quit. Just bring that over here. And so that's where the very first book I did for Image, called Amanda and Gunn, which was a spinoff of Cyberzone. This is the very same characters, but in a completely different setting. And that was kind of, you know, how I got in, and my whole thing with Image. And yeah, it was really weird because here I was on the cover of previews in the era, like you said, of vacuum guns and, you know, pouches all over and pouches and all that stuff all over, and high glossy, you know, stuff, which I appreciate. Don't get me wrong. I love that stuff too. I love comics from A to Z. I'm not a This Is Comics guy. Right. I love comics from A to Z. I don't put down anybody on what they're doing and whatnot. Yeah. But that was a weird time, and I had to really dig deep. But at the same time, I really appreciated what Valentino did, and that was 96, 8, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It was a different world. You're right. It was a completely different world, and it felt different. But at the same time, I still stuck to my guns about doing something different. I didn't just take the same characters and the same stories, you know, in a dystopian world. I took them to Montana. You know, what's Montana going to be like in the year 2050, whatever? So
scary. It's going to be very scary.
Very scary. but yeah, it's stuff like that. And I don't know if I'm answering the question enough, Jamar, but
yeah, no, this is great.
I mean, it was like that. I didn't seek it out, to be honest. I broke into comics. I did what I could. I did it for myself. And I was kind of thinking of throwing in the towel, and then I didn't know people were watching me. I really didn't know people were watching me, and people, you know, I had a couple of other publishers say, "Hey, come on over here," you know, when Jim Valentino called, and I was like, "Wow."
See, and this is the interesting thing to me, is because I think that's one of the kind of hidden things in comics, that there is a kinship here. It doesn't seem like it really exists, but like when the chips are down, and, you know, I think we all have stories about people going like, "Yo, if you hear anything, I really need a gig."
Yeah.
It's kind of tight this month. If you hear anything, and 9 times out of 10, something comes out of that.
Yeah, there's a community out there. There definitely is. Like I could say, Jamar, you know John Jennings. Yeah. And he's over. He's working on a new imprint over there, Megascope and all that. And I'm working with him now. Yeah. I'm trying to get something through that. So that's the kind of community where, you know, things pop up. And there's times when, you know, it goes sideways. You know, I was asked when Milestone was first coming up, and it was Dwayne McDuffie and
Michael
Dennis Cohen and Dennis Cohen. After a panel at San Diego Comic-Con, saw my stuff. I was still self-publishing, and they're like, "Oh, cool, dude, what do you think about writing blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "Well, I just kind of think I'm just going to do my own thing. I just want to continue this and all that." And they're like, "Oh, well, that's cool. Good luck with that." You know, and there's times that community is reversed. Right. They are thinking about you, and there's certain times where it fails because, you know, I was stupid at the time.
Right. You also get much more of a direct, immediate feedback, because it used to be you had to put out 4 issues before you even knew what one did. Really, you know what I mean? You'd have to put out several issues. So if you were saying you were drawing 5 issues, you'd invest a lot of time in the book before you would start getting returns, because 1 always sells, 2 goes down, and either continues to go down with 3 and continues to go down with 4, or it starts to come back.
Right.
But now on the internet, of course, everybody's a comic book reviewer, but you get immediate response, which probably could go either way in the beginning of your career. People go like, "Oh, you're the best thing ever," or "You fucking suck. You are horrible." Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like I mean, we talked about this before, but I mean, I think that was the benefit for me as a young artist.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my editors, but I wasn't getting like immediately just like people on the internet just like jumping on you and smashing your confidence.
Yeah.
I had to deal with a lot of that, especially with Bomb Queen, because it's such a polarizing book.
Yeah.
And it's an acquired taste. And yeah, reviewers would just rip that thing to shreds. But and that would taint your direction sometimes. You can't let reviews get to you sometimes, depending on what it is. I don't know.
How do you? I mean, you're a long time industry vet now, and it still hurts when somebody says something you feel is unfair about your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you just say fuck it? I don't ever read because some people do. They just like never read reviews.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean reviews are sent to me sometimes, and or sometimes I have to go through some reviews to find pull quotes to put on a trade, to dress a trade cover or something like that. And I'll see stuff all over the place. It doesn't affect me as much because I kind of know what's going on, especially if it's in the middle of a series and the actual twist hasn't happened yet. And I'm like, well, they just don't know why I'm doing it that way. So I kind of have that in the back of my head. And like I just said with Bomb Queen, it's an acquired taste. And if somebody doesn't get it, I understand.
Yeah.
I can't interpret it for them or tell them, be didactic and tell them this is what you're supposed to think about it. But I mean, I do know some people where reviews will just crush their souls. I mean, especially if they're really married to a project, it's their baby.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know, Mike. It just it doesn't affect me that much, I guess.
Well, also too, there's like the right project, but at the wrong time, and this is
Exactly.
the wrong. Like if you put that thing out
5
years ago, in the time of the pouches,
right?
People would be like, "Oh no!" But I mean, that's the interesting thing about now is I sort of feel like we've reached this point where there's everything going on all at one time, and it wasn't that way in the '90s.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more that way in the '70s because you had newsstand.
Yes.
So you had a real variety. Right. I mean, like the other day, I go to my comic shop online, and I was looking at 40 years of DC war books. Just all these amazing, beautifully drawn comics about World War I or the Civil War. And we don't do war comics, but they were everywhere until what? The 80s, the late 80s, maybe. That's when the end of it. But I mean, you had people whose whole careers were drawing war comics or westerns, right?
Yeah.
Now, you couldn't do a rah America, war comic now. People would I don't know about that.
Yeah. It's I can do it in Bomb Queen, but that's because she's pushing that button.
Right.
But you're right, Mike. You can't just that's not going to happen. Like I'd love to do a romance book. I really feel romance and drama would work in comics, and it just is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think it has to be a certain type of romance.
True. That one where I'm working on the guy from Guatemala, it had a supernatural element to it. So, I was trying to get something going that way in lieu of romance.
Because you have would you say that Strangers in Paradise is romance, or is it like a hybrid? You know what I mean? Where you have something that has elements of it, horror or whatever, but then you have some other splice on top of it,
Well, see, that was a whole different world, man. I mean, you could do Strangers in Paradise, and the first 2 issues, you still don't even know what the hell's going on. And it would not necessarily sell, but it would limp along, and people would appreciate that it limped along, You can nurture, in other words, you can nurture a book to life back then. I remember, there's a number of series I really liked that I'm pretty sure the numbers were, you know, whatever, but they survived, and because they survived, you know, it's like the Dave Sim thing. It's like, this is like, like, of course you got to read this, dude. It's like, are you crazy? Everybody reads it. It's like, do you know how long that's been going?
Right. You have to survive it. You have to survive your own book, right?
Yeah, and nowadays, you know, with the top 300 and all that stuff, it's really, if you don't make certain percentages now, you don't even get that nurturing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit about before the podcast, because like what was considered to be low end in the 90s or early 2000s would have been like in the 20s or 30s, and it's a lot less than that now. Maybe half. Like there are books they're putting out that's selling like 4,000 or 5,000 copies, and like that's a winner.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I hate to say it, but there's, you know, we've lost a lot of stores, and you know, I think the readers are still there, but you know, and I'm not going to sit here and say digital comics took stuff away, you know, Comixology and all that. It's completely different markets. But yeah, it's like, yeah, man, I just wish we still had the plethora of stores, retailers that we had, you know, but times change.
Well, I also think that the other big difference now that we all face this is that there's so much entertainment. Like when you were doing your work in the 90s, you had comics, you had cable TV, movies, radio. Now you have streaming. So if you're a teenager who's got limited budget,
and this too,
right, and you know, I remember, but the last, I'm not a big gamer now because I'm too busy working, so I don't have time to do games. I used to play games like with PlayStation 2 or something. You can have fun with your buddies playing, you know, Grand Theft or Gran Torino or whatever you were doing, but you wouldn't be involved like all day on the internet with everybody else in these big elaborate campaigns like I hear people are now. And I'm going like, how would you ever get anything done?
You don't. I have to give it up.
Really? Yeah. So you were playing.
I was writing for video game reviews. You know, I had 5 consoles at one time, all at the same time, because I was doing. This was before imports were even a big thing. So I was reviewing import games, you know, still in Japanese and whatnot. And so I had, you know, import players, and then I had all the different consoles, and then I got into online gaming, MMOs and all that. And yeah, it's.
I hear some people, there are some creators I've heard that like just get sucked down that hole, and then that's
it.
Oh yeah, it's an evil. I mean, there's times I will be somewhere and I'll think, oh wow, cool, I've been to this park before, and until I realize that wasn't a video game. that memory was from a video game.
well, luckily you didn't like pull a chainsaw out and shove somebody in half or what.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it could be really invasive, and like you said, yeah, real rabbit hole, especially with MMOs and whatnot. It just never ends. They're not finite, and forgot what year it was, but yeah, I got to the point where it was my birthday and I didn't even know it, because I was playing Final Fantasy, I think 12 at the time, online, and I got to stop this. You know, Eric Stevens had actually called me. He's like, 45. Yeah, it's okay.
Is that what Eric said?
Eric Stevens actually called me and said, because he wasn't a president at that time. He was, I think, assistant to Valentino or something like that. I was doing a book called Avagon, and he wanted to know, it wasn't even finished yet. And he wanted to know if, it's like, hey, Jimmy, when are you thinking this book might come out, kind of a thing? Or where do you think we might get some of the rest of this? Because I only did so many pages. And I'm like, I got to stop this games. And so I just went complete cold turkey, and I gave all my game systems and everything to the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, I held back some of the horror games, but yeah, I just, in one fell swoop, I just dropped it. Like Mike said, there is just no time, and it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole. And the games are so good. You know, that was then. I mean, games now are just wonderful. I mean, I love games. I bought PlayStation 4 when it first came out, just so I could play the Final Fantasy remake. It took years to come out. And And now I'm going like I didn't even finish that. So
right, it's like you just can't. It doesn't fit anymore. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't fit anymore. When you're really in the zone, you know, I will get up and I will lose time, and that will be.
I think that's something that's interesting to talk about though, because it's different for each generation, because the people coming up now are like absorbed with video games from the time they're wee ones, much more than any of us were, and certainly more than I was. So I mean, I was not going to spend 18 hours playing Tank Battle. Boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? I was just, or Pong or something, you know. But you know, you sit there, you know, every once in a while. It's probably been a year, but over a year. But you would go into Target, and sometimes I would just sit there and watch the games, and like, wow, you know, it's pretty. I was just looking at the new Star Wars game. They reviewed it in the New York Times, and I was looking. I was like, wow, that would be a lot of fun to have that. I don't have 3 extra hours out of my day.
Yeah, I mean,
video game.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I you know I played video games from Pong back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah.
And you know that's before memory cards. You know, so you know kids today could talk all kind of stuff they want, but you know in my day, if I can pull out the grandpa line, you know we played a game to the end because we didn't have saves. Yeah. You know, and nowadays you can save at any point in the game. You just say save. You can be right in the middle of a fight or whatever. Say save and and walk away. So there's times when I'm thinking, you know, I could play games. I could, you know, play a dedicated 40 minutes here and hit save. But it's not going to happen. Even I could use. It's still
even to add to that, the games that we played didn't have a pause feature.
Yes.
Like you couldn't hit pause. You just played until you died.
That's right. You played till you got to the end of Super Mario or whatever. You just try to get more lives so you can get to the end. That was kind of it. But but don't get me wrong. I love video games.
We'll have to talk more, Jimmy. That's still my deal. So before we run out of time, I wanted to touch on a couple of things. And thanks for answering some of those image things. What I'm really interested in, to a point, is kind of when you got into image and I'm sure like your profile changed when you started doing the image books, right? And this is almost the beginning, or like kind of like the middle of comic book celebrity. Like Wizard magazine was hopping. I know it sounds like, wait, what? but the fandom was starting to penetrate comics in a different way.
Yeah.
Right. Where this is kind of when I found out you were Black. Right, and I'm sure you've heard that at every comic book convention you've been at. Oh shit, I didn't know you were Black.
Exactly.
It's going to come up when you talk to me and a thing. But I wonder, like, did any of that not? How was the celebrity of being at Image? And like, did you start doing more conventions? Were you just trying to do your work through Jim and having a publisher and not get caught up in the I guess the newfound hype of being in comics?
Circus.
Yeah, because it started to be a little bit of a circus, like the Wizard Hot Top 10 and all that kind of stuff was real thing.
Wizard magazines and all that. With the hot artists of the month and all that.
Yeah.
I didn't get caught up in it. No. I did kind of engage with the circus a little bit. I love conventions. I like talking with fans.
Yeah.
But the whole celebrity thing, no. But I get that question every time I go. I didn't know you're Black, kind of a thing. And I mean, I don't know if that's answering it properly or not, but it's just like,
how do you answer that question? Like,
I mean, I joined the circus to an extent that I can rub elbows with a few people, but I don't think I moved it to the persona of my comics as much. Like,
right.
I still let my comics speak for me. And as I said earlier, I kept changing. So I keep finding different audiences. And because of that, I don't think I had enough celebrity to nail me down. Now,
you mentioned before that if you felt like something wasn't dealing with race, you might do something that would deal with race.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as a because nobody, if they just read your name, they don't know whether you're black or white or gay or straight or whatever. Do you feel that you need to declare anything as a creator? I know some creators do. They feel like right up front, bam, you need to know that I'm a they and this is my whole thing. Other people just put stuff out, and then people find out later that they're this or that or whatever. Do you feel, because I know Jamar feels a certain way about that. Do you feel, because you're like working with the big time, a major publisher right away, so it's not like, and you've been doing that a long time, so it's not like it's struggle buggy, you're kind of getting along kind of a thing.
Right.
No, I never declared. I never made such declarations, and it wasn't until well, that's not true. Yeah, because I had Cyberzone. Okay, but yeah, majority of my characters were white, and so a lot of people would assume I was white or whatnot. And I never had the idea of declaring stuff until I did Power Lines like 4 years ago or whatever, because at that time something was happening, I guess. And I was like, people were like you said, Mike, they're declaring this, like, we need more of this, we need more of that, or we need to have representation here and there. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm black, I have something to say. So it was one of those things where I was kind of catching up, you might say. And so, yeah, I didn't go off, I didn't set my persona with Jimmy the Black Creator or sorts. I guess I was the safe guy. In some way, I was the safe black guy with the blue beard that's not gonna make any waves and all that stuff. But in the same breath, though, it is kind of weird. I mean, I have a real experience with the African American community. I grew up in Oakland, California, for 40 years. I've seen blood on the streets and, blood hose off the sidewalk and bullet casings here and there. I've seen a lot. And, it doesn't really translate into my work for some reason until recently. Like I said, with Power Lines, I wanted to really touch upon that. And recently I just did a book with the city of Oakland on a grant. For inner city school kids, and so that was cool. And that I'm having trouble with this one.
Well, it's interesting, right?
I mean, when I was another thing was when I was doing Cyberzone, the lesbian character who was also doing well in bookstores with lesbians and college bookstores, people would say Mrs. Robinson. They thought I was a woman at that time. So it's the work that I let really speak for me. So it's not. Yeah, I'm trying to separate myself from the work sometimes. So yeah, Mike, I'm not making the declaration, but I feel weird that I'm not sometimes. I do feel weird that I don't make the declaration.
Well, it's funny because there's authors that are always like, it's as much about like a Stan Lee, like there is such a persona. The persona is sort of like the leading stuff before it's the actual work. You know what I mean? And I mean, in comics, was it Howard Chaykin always said it was like being the world's tallest midget or whatever. So like, you think Frank Miller's such and such, or Alan Moore's such and such, there's certain creators that they are like a celebrity that also produces, and you want to, like Stephen King, like you want to read a Stephen King horror book as opposed to somebody else's horror book. But I also think that it's interesting where you say, look, I'm a performer, I'm a creator, and what's important to me is creating the story, not about me being in front of the story, me making the story.
Right. Yeah. That's where I am. But like I just said, I'm also feeling, and maybe it's society, maybe it's just where we are right now. maybe the woke society and all that, that representation does matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I do get a lot of people at conventions who do know I'm Black, and they're like, yeah, we're so glad, blah, blah, blah. To see, a Black guy out here doing this, that, and the other. And my actual inspiration when I was in grade school was Maury Turner from Wee Powell's comic strip. Love that man. He was the one that showed me that you can be a person of color and work as an artist. Up till then, I just I could draw, whatever. But yeah, that was changing. But I don't know, for some reason, that's why I want to work with John Jennings on his Megascope thing. I have a story for that. And I just want to, I don't know, it's really weird. I'm kind of pulled with that question because I do want to say something, and I think I have something to say, and I think it would be helpful to readers for those who are looking for that.
Right.
But at the same time, like Mike was just saying, I'm just a creator guy. I'm an actor. I'm like, today I'm putting on this mask.
Yeah. And this is something we don't talk about enough, because it feels like anybody that is in a platform that we have, like you, Jimmy, being in the business so long and being Black, there are probably people who feel like they're waiting for something to happen from your pen, right? Yeah. Or you're supposed to have a statement, or something. But but also I think seeing more of us in the industry helps people understand that we're not a monolith either.
Yes, I think that representation just alone of me just being Black sometimes helps as well. I think that's just as valuable. I really do. I mean, look at Fred Perry, who does Golddigger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's been doing that like what, issue 400 or something like he's on now or something. He's Black.
Yeah.
And that's like an anime manga style, and a lot of people just don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who do know that, it's like you think, holy crap. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn on that one. That one's weird.
Yeah. And we're not here to submarine you or anything like that, but it's just a really interesting topic, especially in the world we're in. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, on top of all the other things, there's kind of like an outside pressure for you to represent, some,
or declare. I would just say
I like declare,
because I would say that in the last, especially the last year,
mm-hmm.
when you go on something like Twitter, there's all these people declaring who, what, where, why, when, how, and I never experienced that really that much. People were just a writer or an artist. It may have been Black, that may be Asian, or whatever, but it wasn't like all this declaration, like right from the beginning, and then sort of like, well, here's my stance kind of a thing. It's like people like the work, and then you found out more about the person, and then you might find out, oh, that person is this or that or whatever. So it's just sort of, it's different with this. It seems like this current generation of people coming up, there's a lot of declaring things right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think, as I said before, I love comics A to Z, and so there's some people that are gonna make it front and center.
It's 7 o'clock.
Yes, I know. My computer. I actually have her telling me of a quarter hour because that's how I work.
Yeah.
If I hear her say something, and I know I haven't done anything like an hour, because time can just fly right by. But if she's just constantly telling me, Jimmy, it's 7 o'clock, I'm like, oh shit, I need to step it up.
Oh shit, my turkey pot pie is burning.
Do you engage like on Twitter and follow because obviously we're all inside the house now, and we're probably all going to be inside the house. It looks like for at least maybe another year, easily.
You mean by conventions or something, or
conventions? I mean, our old ways of networking and socializing are being transformed daily, right? Like I just read this thing today, the AP put out that 1 out of 3 people say that they're going to refuse to get the vaccine. Yeah. If that's true, then we won't reach herd immunity, which means that we probably won't go back to having conventions. So we're all like operating as like these little islands now. So we have how many Zooms are people doing? And, and you have people that are coming in to the business in a time where there's no physical association at all, or very little, but certainly not like conventions. You're not going around, you're not going to the table and, like you did probably like give out copies of your book to people, things like that, right? So is that affecting you? Do you see that affecting, how you go about using, because we all have to use social media too now, just almost as a valve, as a way to interact with other people, other artists, other creators.
I for me personally, no, it's not affecting me too much. I'll be honest. I mean, I have a lot of anxiety when I go to comic conventions. I mean, I there's times that I just like, I can't go. And, I'll feel like I can't go. My wife was with me she was, I forgot what year it was. My wife was with me once, and I remember WonderCon, and I was just not there mentally. And I said I couldn't go. And so she's like, okay, I understand. And we went to a park instead for that day. There's times I can't do it. So I'm kind of in the middle of that, where I'm like, I don't miss it too much. I miss the readers and the fans, but there's times the whole convention thing, and my wife will tell you, I'll complain, I'll bitch about all the things, preparation. And then I get there and I love it, and I hate when it ends. I'm like, no, wait, just 5 more days.
I need to eat those hot dogs for 5 more days. Terrible chairs says destroy my back.
So yeah, it's just kind of weird, push me, pull you, but the anxiety I don't miss. I mean, anybody that has asked me to draw anything at a convention, draw in their sketchbook or draw a commission or whatever, they've seen me sweat. I mean, I literally sweat. It's a condition I have where I will physically sweat. I have fans at my table, rotary fans. Yeah, I have fans blowing on me and everything because I don't, psychologically, I freak out.
So it is sort of like the exact opposite experience of your daily life. You go from being in a room by yourself to in a room with thousands of people or hundreds of people.
Yeah. Yeah, but and that's what I'm saying. I kind of don't mind. It's not affecting me. And for people like us, we've always been in the house working a lot. But that part of the convention has stressed me out in the past. As a matter of fact, now that since you mentioned that, I'm wondering how I am going to handle going back. It's going to be strange. I'm really trying to deal with my hyperhidrosis issues, where I'm just constantly, it's just, I'll sitting still and start sweating just because you asked me to draw something.
Wow. And that's just a really interesting splash of water for, say, the fan who wanders into the show and just kind of, I think the fans have an assumption that we're all like, we unplug ourselves from the RoboCop chair and we're ready to go for 5 days straight. I've talked a little bit about on the show about how it's such a dangerous precipice to stand on when every interaction with a fan could make them hate you.
Yeah.
If you say, look, I've really got to go pee. Can you come back in 20 minutes? Oh, screw Jimmie Robinson. He sucks.
Yes.
Right? And then they go and pollute your
Every time I talked to him, he was going to take a piss. Damn it.
Yeah, my wife will tell you that I've got a whole bunch of things I don't eat at the table. I don't want people to see me eating at the table. My wife will bring stuff back. I know you're hungry. You've been here for 7 hours. Come on, eat this. I can't eat in front of people.
I can't. I gotta go behind this curtain.
Are you crazy? She see me hide behind my roll-up banner, just trying to nibble on something real quick because as you said, we're not like always there and always 100% on. We have issues too.
Yeah. So for all you fans out there, be nice to us. Be gentle.
Be nice. Yes.
Bring him something, but don't expect him to eat it in front of you.
That's right.
What I normally get from fans is Hello Kitty stuff. So that's what I normally get. People bring me Hello Kitty, this, that, or the other, because they know I like Hello Kitty a lot.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to wrap up, but it's just funny that you said that. I know a lot of creators who have a thing that people bring to them, like our buddy Mike Norton. People used to bring him circus peanuts. that really nasty candy.
What they bring you, Mike? Did they bring anything to you? Do you have a?
They can just bring me money. I'm okay.
Your thing is money.
Money. I'm happy with that. I can take care of everything else.
Hey, Jimmy, we're gonna let you go. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being with us. Yeah, the time just melted away.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy, where can people follow you online, or where are your socials where people can follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr.
Thing.
My website, JIMMIE-Robinson.com. I'm still, it's up, but I'm still filling it up. There's a lot of stuff I did put up on there that has never been published or printed. I just put a bunch of illustrations and stuff up. So yeah, JIMMIE-Robinson.com. Facebook, my wall's public. You don't have to friend me or anything. Just come and look at my stuff. I'm on Facebook a bit, and that's Instagram and Twitter. And again, the same name, Jimmie Robinson. Fill in Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Well, Jimmy, I want to thank you. I think our podcast has a combined overall power with our facial hair.
Yes, all three of us. Yeah,
being so amazing. Sip of coffee for good grooming.
But see, it's not just the facial hair; it's also that we have the glasses.
Oh,
all three of us have glasses in it. But I don't have the headset.
Well, next time
I can put it on.
There you go. Next time we'll be in accordance.
Yeah.
All right. So Jimmy, thanks so much. We're gonna roll out. Hang out with us when we do we have a little thing we do at the end. Just follow along.
Cool. We'll do.
All right, guys. Thanks so much to our disembodied head in the clouds, Brett Blevins, smiling down on us. Hi, Brett. This has been Jamar Nicholas with my best bud Mike Manley and Jimmy. Thank you so much for watching the podcast. We'll see you next week at Wednesday. We don't have the guest yet, but we'll let you know. And don't forget, all right, Jimmy, you ready to wash those Kirby hands? There you go. That's a good one. Nice. All right, you guys. See you next week. Take care.